going by memory. I know Marcus too.
Well, I figured it might be better this fall or winter.
Good evening and welcome to the July 17th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. The meeting is now called to order. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
The agenda of Monday, July 17th, 2023 Board of Education meeting be approved as set forth, and that each item is considered ready for discussion and/or action.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is a roll call vote.
Director Roundtree.
Aye.
Director Newman.
Aye.
Director Merschbrock. Aye. Director Humbles.
Aye.
Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Director Garlock.
Aye.
President Tominski.
Aye. Tonight, we have a public hearing for the issuance of not to exceed $30 million school infrastructure sales, services, and use tax revenue bonds. Board Secretary Rinstrom, have we received any written correspondence related to the public hearing on tonight's agenda?
Yes, we have, and it has been printed off, and each board member has received a copy of it.
Thank you. Do we have anyone who has requested to address the board this evening regarding the published hearing?
We do not.
The public hearing is now officially closed. I will turn the meeting over to Dr. Grover for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Tominski. So just a few quick updates here for the summer. Let's see. So welcome to July. Everything is official for me. The interim tag has been removed, and I'm so excited to share my superintendent's report with you all. First on the agenda tonight, we'd like to talk about the teacher recruitment update. And first of all, we want to acknowledge the work of our human resources team and just working alongside our administration in recognizing our goal of having 100% of our classrooms filled by certified teachers by the first day of school. So this year, our applications and careers webpage visits are up from last year, so the campaign is working as intended. We have filled 75% of our open teaching positions since the end of April. Currently, we have 42 FTE positions open. Today, we had a strategy meeting led by Mr. Ballard with our principals to brainstorm different ways for us to finish strong to reach that 100% goal. And I was quite impressed with their ability to, first of all, I think we've just reduced the number of vacancies by 25% just in that meeting alone. That means that the principals are already thinking about different strategies of how to fill the vacancies at the local level at their campus, but also having the opportunity to see the bigger picture of the entire district and the openings. They were able to share some different strategies for the ones that are completely filled at their campuses with people that are still looking. I really appreciated just the idea sharing. We also generated some next steps, and we will be reviewing those at the cabinet level early next week. And I do believe that if we can just stop any internal movement, that's a challenge for us. We still have people that are moving from one school to the next, and we love to be able to honor that, but it does cause problems this late in the game, because at this point, it's highly unlikely that you're going to recruit people from other districts because they too are locked into contracts. And so we're trying to figure out how to overcome that. But just some great strategies that were put forth. We'll try to have as less impact as possible to very few people as possible. But again, our commitment is to our students that are in the classroom, particularly in their content and specialty areas. Also, this is a little bit of a commercial. It's more or less for our community, but we definitely want to make sure that our community is receiving the information that they need. So we have made a few updates and hopefully some improvements to our student management tool, Infinite Campus. So to ensure access to the most up-to-date version, please update Infinite Campus bookmarks saved on your devices. So for our mobile app users, you must delete the Infinite Campus app. Don't worry, just delete it from your phone and reinstall it. Please reinstall it in order to get the updated version. So we're sorry for the little inconvenience, but of course we know this happens a lot with other updates that we have on our mobile devices. All right, this is just a reminder for our community. I certainly do need your help with the annual verification. This lets us know that you are coming back to Cedar Rapids Community School District, but also how we can stay in contact with you. It's your yearly chance to update your consent forms for field trips, photo releases, and technology use. When you complete the process, your information helps us to keep you in the know, especially in case of emergencies and other events like those snow days. And the best part, you may be eligible for reduced school fees, so please don't wait. Just go online to, again, the Infinite Campus Parent Portal to complete the annual registration verification. And it's important because, believe it or not, this also plays into us being able to place our teachers where we know our students are going to be, so we can be ready for day one, knowing that you're going to be back in our school district. So thank you for your cooperation with updating your annual verification. Also, a treat for our families, just to make sure that we're streamlining our information. We are looking forward to launching our back-to-school information website. This district is working on this website for families. They will have everything you need to know for back to school. So look for the website towards the end of July. And just a little treat for you, look at this new greenhouse recently constructed at Metro High School. The space will be ready to engage students this fall, so all the people that enjoy planting and so forth, you can get ready to help support Metro. Students and Metro staff, they were part of the design and the construction of this outdoor classroom space, garden beds, composting, and setting up the inside of the greenhouse. And I look forward to visiting and probably learning something new too. That concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you for the report. Are there any board reports? We will now hear from those who have requested to address the board. Ryan, do we have any members of the public that have requested to address the board?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, are there any items that a board member would like to pull for a comment, question, or separate vote?
President Tominski, I need to pull BA 24-030 for a separate vote, please.
Ryan, it's listed here as BA 23030, is that correct, or is it the 24?
It'd be 24.
Okay. Are there any other items?
Yes, I need to pull BA 24-022 for a separate vote.
Okay, we can pull, is there anything else for comment, separate vote, question? Okay. So let's take the vote on BA 24022. That's the approval of the CR Metro Economic Alliance membership. We'll do that as roll call.
Director Roundtree. Director Newman. Director Merschbrock. Director Humbles.
Aye.
Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Director Garlock.
Aye.
President Tominski.
Aye. Then next, we'll take BA 24030, which is the amended agreement with Solemn Lang Architects LLC. That would be a roll call vote as well.
Director Roundtree.
Aye.
Director Newman.
Aye.
Director Merschbrock. Aye. Director Humbles.
Aye.
Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Director Garlock. President Tominski.
And then finally, we'll take the rest of the agendas minus BA 24022 and BA 24030. Again, this is roll call vote.
Director Roundtree.
Aye.
Director Newman.
Aye.
Director Merschbrock. Director Humbles.
Aye.
Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Vice President Garlock. President Tominski.
Aye. Next under Board Governance, Director Borcherding, I'll turn the next item to you regarding the 2024 IASB legislative platform.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So every year, IASB sets its legislative platform by getting input from every district within the state. Board members were asked to select their top 4 issues from the resolutions and communicate those back to me. I have not heard from everybody yet, so do not have those tallies for you. At which point, the consensus on that will, those top 4 will be communicated to IASB, and they will take those into consideration with input from all of the other districts to help form the items that we will be focusing on this next session. So I would ask board members to please check their email and get back to me with their top 4.
Normally Normally, we would vote on that, but we're going to table that until next meeting when all that's in. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you for the update. The next item is a resolution for school meals. Are there any questions for Director Merschbrock regarding this item?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to make a comment. I wholeheartedly agree with the resolution, and I just do want it to be known that this is a priority, a legislative priority that we've been working on. I know it's been introduced in the Iowa legislature, and I personally have added my support to that. I've also made contact with Congresswoman Hinson's office about this same topic, and I have yet to hear back from them, but along with the resolution, I do just want to make sure everyone knows that we are actively pursuing legislation along these lines. It's not just a resolution. Thank you.
Yes, before we vote, I just, want to say a few things. I saw this in action today. I was in Wellington Heights near Johnson Steam Academy, and we're doing summer meals at Johnson and many other sites. And there was a line of cars and kids and their parents walking to and from the school today. And so I think if not when, or when not if, this is a reality, it'll be a great benefit to the entire community. One step I think that we could take further, just tonight we renewed our membership with the UEN, the Urban Education Network. Perhaps this is a chance to get in contact with some of our fellow large districts in the state and get some collaboration going. Perhaps if you had a resolution from all those districts, it might carry a little bit more weight at the legislature. And Director Garlock, I appreciate the support you've had for this in the past and the work that's been done in the legislature prior to now. I also wanted to thank Kelly McMahon from CREA, who provided language for this resolution and reached out when I brought it up at the last meeting and in firm support of this. And just to kind of draw a link, I believe we're working to do more community schools work. And this is the type of thing that no matter what school you're at, you need. This is really about meeting the needs of students, no matter what their background is. Everybody's got to eat. And so I appreciate the support from my fellow directors, and thank you all.
Yep. Appreciate your leadership on this. Is there a motion to approve the resolution, school meals?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. This is a roll call vote.
Director Roundtree. Aye. Director Newman. Aye. Director Merschbrock.
Aye.
Director Humbles.
Aye.
Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Director Garlock. Aye. President Kaminsky.
Aye. The last board governance item is a resolution, safe and secure storage. Are there any questions for Director Garlock? Would you like to make a few comments?
Sure, of course. I want to thank Moms Demand Action for making the presentation to us a couple meetings ago, I believe it was. It was very informative. It helped us understand what the resolution was about and bringing the resolution forward. I would maybe ask my fellow board members to weigh in on one line in the resolution about requiring a parent signature. I'm not opposed to a parent signature. I'm just wondering if that doesn't add more burden to our staff to monitor that. I think disseminating the information is important. I'm not sure that it's really manageable to keep checking on parent signatures. So I guess I would recommend that we maybe strike that sentence. Thoughts?
So would the motion be to approve the resolution with a removal of that
Of
line?
requiring the signature, yeah.
I would just, can I ask a question real quick?
Of course, yep.
Dr. Grover, is there any thoughts you have on that? Would that be, because I can see it from both sides. It is an extra burden for the staff, but as a parent, if you just send me materials, I might pass it along and not read it. If I have to sign it, I might read it over twice. Any thoughts on whether or not that is necessary and too much of a burden?
Well, I believe it's a fair question. As we know, when sending information home to parents, we have so much that we're sending, and I think right now is a good step forward for us to be able to share the information with them and continue to engage it as a first step. And I think we can evaluate whether or not we need to take any additional steps. But I think it's fair for us to move just a required piece because when we're sending information home, the other part of that too is that that's pretty much a one-way conversation. People might have conversations where they may need additional information if they're going to actually sign it. But our commitment is being able to share the information and the importance of what's outlined within the resolution.
Thank you.
Two questions. So this is a resolution, but it's not a direction for action yet, right? And my second question is, can this be something that is included in the digital signatures that we have in Infinite Campus and that parents are required to acknowledge receipt of the information?
And we could certainly take a look at that. We can discuss that with Craig.
Great. Any additional questions, comments? Yeah.
Well, I would just
Director Newman.
say, given that it's a resolution right now, do we really need to strike that if we're still looking into a few things?
We strike the parent signature.
Do we need to strike it if we are still researching our options? This is a resolution. It's not action yet.
Well, maybe I would advise that we do consider,
No.
well, I was just gonna say maybe we can tweak it where it's more of a may sign or may have the opportunity. I would say we probably need to soften the language because right now it says required. And so that actually puts a little bit of pressure on us, as well as the parents, probably, without enough support to be able to move that forward. So I would be hesitant in that regard. Or you can just table it and we can bring it back.
Yeah.
I don't know that we need to table it, but this doesn't go into policy at this point in time. So it's still just a resolution, whether
Right.
we strike it or not.
Yeah, and I think maybe the suggestion here is that language implies that we would further take that action. So even though
Okay.
this is a
I'm comfortable with whatever the group
Yeah,
wants to do,
great.
but
Concerned about putting more work on our staff. That's my only concern
So why
with
don't
that
we
line.
just
Yeah.
Hold on and then revise
And,
it.
and I'm in agreement with Vice President Garlock that just striking that and to go with the resolution as is. So there's not additional work put on staff.
I like the option of just softening the language from it being a requirement to a may, not a required.
We're not dealing with that right now.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the resolution removing that language regarding parent signature?
So moved.
Is there a second? This is a roll call vote.
Director Roundtree. Director Newman. Director Merschbrock. Director Humbles.
Aye.
Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Director Garlock. President Tominski.
Moving on to administration, the board is asked to consider and approve the amended engagement letter with Piper, Sandler and Company for school infrastructure, sales and sales services and use tax revenue, and general obligation bonds. Are there any questions for Carla? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Moving on to administration, the board is asked to consider and approve the resolution determining to proceed with issuance of school infrastructure sales, service and use tax revenue bonds, authorizing and setting for sale of bonds, approving use of official statements, approving bond purchase agreement, and taking additional action thereon. Are there any questions for Carla? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
The board is going to take a brief recess before our 2 work sessions. Do we have a motion to go into recess?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, this board will be in recess for about 5 minutes as we set up for our work session. It's not hurting.
All this thing here. Are we think we're gonna be here for a while?
The first work session item tonight, Dr. Grover will provide a summary of the transition and strategic plan.
All right, very good. Well, first of all, I want to take the opportunity I know that at the last board meeting, we were able to share the names of our executive cabinet, but we do have several of our members here with. Oh, do you call it back to session? Okay, yeah.
Calling this meeting back to session.
We were just testing you, Ryan.
I know.
Okay, so now I can officially say we have the opportunity to introduce a few of our cabinet members that are with us tonight as I move into our strategic plan because they will be largely responsible for helping to carry out the work. Let's start with our chief of schools. With us tonight, we have Linda Rasak. She is going to be the chief of Area 3. That will be schools that will be surrounding or more or less neighborhood schools for Kennedy High School. In addition to, she will also have Metro, Polk, and our virtual schools. Next to her is Dr. Audrey Anderson, and she will be Area 1, and she will have the schools that are in the attendance zone for Washington High School. And missing here tonight, but you've met Mark Timmerman before. He's been here, and he is in Area 2, which will have the schools that are associated with the Jefferson attendance zone. You already know Carla Hogan, who is on our team as well. And we also have Corrine Thardison, who is our Chief Academic Officer. And so we have an old face in a new place, and that would be Mr. Darius Ballard, who is our Chief of Human Resources. And, of course, you know Ryan, and you will hear more from John Galbraith tonight, who is our Chief of Operations. So would you help me welcome all of the new faces and people that have been here, and some people in new roles that are collectively helping us to lead the district. So speaking of leading the district, I was just recounting here with Director Newman that I believe when we started our conversation at our first board retreat was around our strategic plan. This was in March. And so being that I was here early, it certainly benefited me in a way of being able to capitalize on the listening tours and understanding how to move our strategic plan forward. As we know, our current strategic plan, it expired at the end of 2022. But we were able to look at some of the things that were accomplished within that plan and maybe some things that we could roll over, as well as what is our new learning as we move forward. We're really looking at this, and this is still, I would say, somewhat in draft form. We're getting closer to it, but we still have a little bit of wordsmithing. We did have the opportunity to work through this with the executive cabinet, but also with our executive council leadership so that they could give feedback and prioritize some of the information. As you may know, I think I put a document that looks sort of like this. This is a longer version of it, so we tried to create two versions of it. This could be some of your bedtime reading if you'd like to go into more details here. But we contracted with Avon Education Partners, if you recall that, and that was a great opportunity to take all of the information from the listening tours, from the surveys, from various sources of feedback, also from the top rank report. We provided all of that information to them so that they could help us synthesize the information, codify, and get it down to where some of our priority areas and where we were hearing some trends. And we really appreciate that in order to provide integrity and credibility to the process so that it wasn't just us going through trying to figure out the information, but we had some accountability. So basically, if you want to just maybe follow along with me in summary, what we feel like we heard and how we'd like to articulate this as part of our strategic plan going forward, that the key areas that we need to focus in on it would be around, number one, mobilizing our community. I would talk more about that shortly. Stabilizing the district, energizing our staff so that we would be able to elevate every learner future ready. So we are really looking at keeping our same vision that we have of every learner future ready, but we really do see this strategic plan as a blueprint to helping us to get there. So if you're able to turn over to mobilizing the community, one of the items that were first and foremost for us was considering our facilities. And basically, what is the design? So you will see the same framework and structure throughout our strategic plan. The design is what are we trying to accomplish? And so our learning environments are safe, supported, functional, and updated. Most of this is a lot that will be hinging on the second report that you will hear tonight around the facilities master plan. The other area around mobilizing our community was strong family engagement. Our families, they want to be involved in many different ways. And you can see some of the key areas is offering district parent workshops and trainings on specific concerns, hosting school-based staff training about the importance of strong families so that we're working both sides. We're talking to our families and we're also talking to our staff about how we engage with our families. And making sure that we have sites that are available to provide services. We can always point to Hoover Elementary as a shining star for us in regards to our community schools, but we only have one. And so, but the needs are greater, and so we'll be looking to expand those. So the next one is around stabilizing our school district. And what do we mean by that? We've had, I guess in some ways we can say some challenges here within the district, but making sure that we can get some continuity and some sustainability within our district, it is key. All of this is feedback from our staff, so we want to think about how we attract our students, our enrollment. And so again, you can see where many of these areas are connected, but we have been seeing a decline in our enrollment. Some of our focus is understanding, getting out, doing exit interviews with families, understanding why families are coming here, the ones that stay, but also figuring out why some families might be leaving and how we need to be able to adapt in order for us to maintain our position. And right now, we're the second largest school district in the state. We want to stay that way, but that means that we have to turn the tide with our enrollment. We want to make sure that we have transparent and inclusive communication. So part of this, I probably overtalk a lot, but it's an attempt certainly to be transparent and inclusive, meaning that we want to make sure that we are engaging across our community, something that people want to know what's happening along the way, not just when a decision is final. Build trust and credibility. This is huge for us in regards to building trust and relationships. And a lot of that is grounded in collaboration and making sure that we are focused on the vast, diverse needs of our students. One of the areas that you can see here, how will we accomplish this? And these are the strategies that were explained to us from our listening. Number one, just making sure that we're out visiting the schools, making sure that we're fostering the relationship between our district staff. I think we had a beautiful example of that today as we're thinking about how do we fill our positions. We know that we can't come up with all the ideas by ourselves. We brought in the principals, and trust me, we got to problem solving. I mean, literally, they were able to tackle half of it within 30 minutes because you had so much brain trust in the room. And that's an example of how we want to work with our staff going forward. So to build upon that, the next area is energizing our staff. We want our staff members to feel proud, optimistic, and committed to their roles. And trust, many people out there, they love being in Cedar Rapids Community School District, and that's what we want. We want our people to stay here. Many people have years of connections within our district, and they want that job satisfaction to go along with it. So part of our goals would be working on staff retention, but people also want to be promoted and developed within the district. We hear a lot about professional learning, but professional learning that they feel like is relevant, but it's also helping to support them to think about their career goals. And you will see some of that work happening this year with us. The other area, as far as energizing our staff, is stable attendance. As we know, we need our teachers to be present so that our students can get the best opportunity to learn, but understanding more about what are some of the challenges to us reaching a 95% of our staff members being present. And oftentimes that does mean, are they still energized? Are they still excited about their work? Do they understand their value and their purpose? And also the expectation and how we need to support them to be there. The diverse and culturally competent staff that continues to come up across the board in every conversation, making sure that we have diverse experiences across the board to be able to reach the students that are in front of us. So, said all that to say that we have to mobilize our community. Our community must be involved. Our district has to be stable from our policies, our processes. We have to make sure that we also energize our staff. We say we want to reach kids. We cannot reach them without our staff. That's going to be important for us, all for one single goal of elevating every learner to be future ready. So our student achievement goals, these are still in front of us. These were some that we were able to bring over from the previous strategic plan. So we definitely want to be looking at how our students are performing on the Iowa assessments. We want to also make sure that we're reaching all student groups, so there's equitable student outcomes. You'll be able to see some of the goals that we have there. Safe and secure learning environments, making sure that we have mental health supports for our students, making sure that our administrators, that they're also informed in how to work with our students in that particular area, and just making sure that students know how to advocate for themselves as well as others. And I will say that's something I've been quite impressed with our school district. I do believe that our students feel like they have agency and voice, and I know that that's something that apparently that you had to cultivate within our student body. And ultimately, we want our students to graduate college and career ready. Right now, we need to focus on increasing our graduation rate. Is right below the 80% mark, and so we're hoping to graduate more students, but not only graduating our students, but graduating them with more than a diploma. Are they walking out with college credit? Are they walking out with certification so that they are workforce ready? That is our ultimate goal. Our success is defined by the success of our students when they graduate. So that is the long version of the plan. You also have the little one-pager. This is the short version of the plan if you just want to get familiar with the language. And again, you will hear this from us over and over. We'll be looking to mobilize our community, stabilize our school district, energize our staff so that we can elevate our students in order to be able to elevate their plans, pathways, and passions. And we know that that is part of our mission statement as we utilize this blueprint for every learner to be future ready. I will entertain any questions, feedback, concerns, and again, we are still doing a little tweaking to some of the goals as well as just fine-tuning the language.
So I would like to start by genuinely thanking you and administration. I know this has been a lot of hard work looking at a lot of data, and I'm really impressed at the level that the community has also provided some feedback as well as across buildings within our system. When we're talking about staffing, this is probably a little bit in the weeds, but I just want to make sure that we're making allotment for some teacher leadership positions when we're looking at that internal promotion and when we're looking at professional development and such.
Yes, absolutely. That is ideal. And we have somewhat of a robust teacher leadership program as it relates to how many teachers move into coaching roles. I think where we could improve is making sure that they're also prepared to go to the next step if they're going to move into administration, and what does any type of academy support, as well as even we have people that are in our engagement specialist role that they can also move up to the teacher role. So we are definitely looking to develop a pipeline of sorts so that we can provide that leadership.
And I think along with that, I just want to make sure, I think it's the board's responsibility to make sure that we have, that we're supporting plans that maybe if there's somebody who's sliding into a position where they don't have historical experience, that there is some professional development, some training opportunity to help them be successful in that role.
Agreed. Thank you.
I do just want to acknowledge this is a ton of work to have done in the beginning of July. So I think this board was motivated to have you serve as our interim because it allowed us to hit the ground running. This definitely feels like hitting the ground running. And I appreciate also, and I think we all appreciate just measurable goals. So not just stating these are what we shoot for, but this is what we plan on measuring. There's a column in the document that says timeline. Can you maybe elaborate on how you see that? I know that in the top of that, the top line items have a date and maybe a metric. Can you maybe highlight the timeline for each of those items?
Yes, so as the executive cabinet for our work together, we definitely try to take a look at where we are and to try to establish something that was definitely high expectations, aspirational, as well as achievable with all the work that we have in front of us. You know, one step that we want to go after this is being able to continue to work with our leadership team as well as involve our teachers. This has been a lot of work really, really fast. So basically, people have had the opportunity to provide input to be able to get us to this step. Now we're going to have to start solidifying our exact strategies. So we want to take this fall and be able to continue to engage with the principals as well as the staff to be able to put some timelines in regards to when do you think we can get that done. Especially, so for example, we talked about improve our hiring and onboarding process, but which I am happy to report, I think we're already on the way with some of that. So we've been working with Craig and that team, and is that going to be 6 months out, 3 months out? And so we just need a little bit more engagement with a few more people, and we're during the summer months that can be challenging. So we can definitely bring it back with some more concrete timelines. This is a 3-year plan. What we hope to show you next will probably be what's going to happen in year 1, year 2, and then year 3, so you could be able to see the runway for the work.
When can the board expect to have a final plan?
As far as I would say, this is the framework. So if we go back to our original workshop or training that we had, I think it was Dr. Jenkins that talked about. As a matter of fact, I have to tell her that I did reach this milestone. She wasn't quite sure that I would get there, that we've reached this milestone as a district. But I want to caution us just a little bit. It will probably be after school start. This will be high level. I do plan on sharing this at the all staff, but I also want to validate what I talked about earlier in regards to that collaboration. So before I ask you for final approval, I'd like to be able to have a few more conversations with principals and maybe to see if we can get any type of fine-tuning feedback from our staff. At the very latest, I would say the fall of October, but that's not going to stop us from moving the work forward. We just want to make sure we had enough touch points. One part of this, and especially just some of the change in dynamics, but there's so much groundwork that has already occurred here throughout these processes. You just want to make sure that people have the opportunity to be involved. They have their fingerprints on it so that they also take accountability for it, because we won't get the work done just because we like the plan and we believe in it. We want to make sure that everybody else also, that they're taking stock in it as well and understanding the role they play.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I think just kind of building on what you were saying of people taking stock and their participation kind of making this work. I'm wondering, I didn't see in the notes, is there any scaffolding that's relating this to the HRD and the HRS work that we already have, the high reliability district and high reliability schools?
Yes, I would say that that's probably a different conversation. So at each one of my listening tours, I did kind of talk about the high reliability schools work. I think at the elementary level, you definitely have people that have been committed to that process, particularly at level 1. Even at the middle schools, the high schools, it kind of varies. I think people were able to have some autonomy in how they kind of move through that process. And so that's really what we're talking about. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting coming up, maybe even this week, with the Marzano team to kind of talk about that. But you will be able to see, especially when we're talking about safe and secure learning environments, much of that is, a lot of it is already established because of the high reliability school work. So I think for us, it would be clarifying, being more specific, and trying to get continuity across the district. Right now, I think each building, they've kind of led it, but we would like to be able to look for that predictability no matter which school you attend. What is the standard you can expect across all of our buildings?
Good, thank you.
Not sure this is a question, probably more of a comment. First of all, the stabilize the district, it kind of takes guts for us to say we need to stabilize the district. And I'm glad that we're verbalizing that, and I'm glad that we have an emphasis on it, because it needs to happen, and we can't have great schools if we don't have supported and great teachers. So I'm excited about that. I know you've talked a lot about collaboration within the community, whether that's nonprofits or the business community. And I'm hoping that there's an emphasis on that somewhere within here, and for volunteers, additional volunteers. We're not going to change our funding structure anytime soon, and we need to make sure that we have the supports to do what we want to do in this plan.
Okay, thank you. Noted, and we will make sure if it's not called out, because we definitely know that we have tons of community partners. I've met with so many of them that stand ready to support us, and definitely we'll make sure that it's highlighted.
Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you for the update. Our final agenda item is an update on the facilities master plan. I will turn the meeting over to Dr. Grover and John Galbraith.
Okay, wonderful. Just a little bit more from me, then I'm going to turn over so you can hear the voice of John for most of this presentation. But I do, again, want to thank the Board of Education for the opportunity to be here over the last several months. A lot of our time has been around understanding the facilities master plan. I'm very grateful that I've had the opportunity to spend some time really learning about all the investments that the school district and the community that they've taken on for our facilities, and as well as the hard work of many, you talk about volunteers, but people that have been part of the process, whether it was with the elementary plan or the secondary plan, as well as understanding feedback from the board and the community. I do believe that what we will present tonight, that it will give us an opportunity to understand some of the context of what we have been discussing over the past several months as a school district, and give us a path forward that really honors all corners of our community. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to John, and then I'll come back at the end.
Thank you, Dr. Grover. So we can go ahead and flip to the second page since we don't have since we're doing this on paper. I'll tell you that when I'm jumping the next one, so you guys can keep track where we are on the slides here. So the history slide. So we're going to go back all the way to 2000. Year 2000 was the last time that we have asked our community for a general obligation bond. So 23 years ago. 2002, we opened Viola Gibson. That was part of the bond. There was many other smaller renovations throughout our district at that time, but that was kind of the main project of that bond from 2000. A little more recent history. 2016, we convened a community facilities task force. That was really the group that led the elementary plan, or it got narrowed to the elementary plan, and the elementary plan is what came out of that group in 2018. In 2021, a couple key dates here. We reconvened that task force, and that group took a look at our secondary plan, what we were going to do with secondaries. We still had the elementaries going, but where was secondaries going to fall in? And we knew that when that committee came up with the elementary plan in 2018, that the secondary plan would have to come. Also in 2021, we paid off our GO bond debt. So Cedar Rapids School District does not have a GO bond levy, does not have GO bond debt right now. We're at 0. 2022, the committee came to the board with our secondary plan, and we'll talk a little bit about that here on the next slide or two. And now we're here now, 2023, with an updated facilities plan. So you can go to the next slide. So where we were here in November of 22 and in January of 2023 with the secondary facilities plan in its final draft, and that's what we're looking at here. So I'll just run through these quick by way of reminder. A land acquisition for a new site for a new middle school on the north side of the district. A new 1,200 student building at a new site. A new 600 student building at the Wilson site. A Franklin Middle School renovation, 600 student capacity. Taft renovation, and you'll see there step 1, which that was going to be an addition of a gym and some small remodeling, was not a total replacement of that building. Updates to the middle school track and fields at 5 locations. High school activity areas at 3 locations. That was the repurposing of the current pool spaces at those buildings. New turf field at the 3 high schools. Updates to the Kennedy cafeteria and kitchen. Updates to the Metro gym, and a new aquatic center. So this recommendation was to the board after feedback from staff, community groups, and open house meetings. So this really didn't incorporate any of the feedback that we had received from the board yet. Next slide, next page. So what have we heard since we last presented to the board? We heard about concerns about the closing of the McKinley building. We heard that both from the school board and from our community. As we dug into that deeper, The student population density confirmed the same thing. There is a high number of students that live around the McKinley School. Equitable resources for our students. And what do we mean by that? We mean transportation, community resources, student supports, that all students have those resources and it's spread equitably to them. We heard there was confusion about the elementary and secondary plan. We would talk facility master plan, and we'd hear comments like, so is this the secondary plan? Is this the elementary plan? What plan is this? We feel like there's multiple plans out there, and we don't know which one it is. Questions about the aquatic center. Things like, will this work to have a central aquatic center for our 3 high schools and our middle schools? Transportation, how will students get there? Will that be a barrier? Where will it be located? Are there any partnership opportunities with other organizations? We also heard the affirmation of a feeder system that to maximize our building efficiency, to address our enrollment and also our building capacity. If you remember, we talked about specifically at the middle school level, we have about capacity for roughly 4,700 students, and our middle school enrollment is right around 3,200. We heard about the significance of historical buildings in our community. And we heard about the need for college and career readiness opportunities for our students. Next slide. So how did we adjust? On the left side of this slide is the 2022 secondary plan. So that was the work that came from the committee. It was good work. It was tough work to get to that point. We had our first meeting with that committee in November of 2021, and the final board presentation was in January of 23. So 15 months worth of work is what got us to the plan that you see there. Many, many hours, many, many meetings went into that by quite a few people. So we really want to honor the work that they did for us, that those volunteers came to the table, stepped up, and got us this far. So feedback from the board and during our listening sessions is what led to the adjustments of this plan. So as we go through here, the arrows signify that that is just a movement from the 2022 plan to the 2023 plan. I am going to point out on here that the Franklin renovation was originally for a 600 student building. That is now for an 800 student building, so there is a minor adjustment to that plan. So what else changed? Instead of the renovation, initial renovation at Taft, that will now be a new 1,200 student building on the Taft site. And if you remember in 2022, we did talk about that we would have to have a second ask in order to get that to a 1,200 student building. So instead of going back for that second ask or second adjustment in the plan, we're going to include that in the plan now. Good question, Director Noon. I apologize. This would be down towards the bottom. So I'll run through these to be clear. Thank you. Yep, no problem. So land acquisition on a new site, that stays the same. That's shifting right over from the 2022 plan. Next line down is the new building, 1,200 student on a new site. Same thing, that shifts over to the 2023 plan. New turf at the 3 high schools, that shifts from the 2022 plan directly over to the 2023 plan. Along with the Kennedy Kitchen cafeteria renovation, that moves over to the 23 plan as well. Updates to the Metro Gymnasium, same thing, comes right from the 2022 plan, goes to the 2023 plan. Franklin renovation, initially for 600 students, moves to the 2023 plan with an update to serve 800 students. High school aquatic center and high school activity areas, that moves from the 2022 plan to the 2023 plan as well. Now when we get down to the bottom, the renovation for Taft on the left side there, that is step 1, turns into a new building at the Taft site for 1,200 students. The new building at the Wilson site for 600 students, that now shifts to McKinley's 6th grade renovation, 400 students. So McKinley will be a 400 student, 6th grade only building. Franklin will be an 800 student, 7th, 8th grade building. Middle school track and field, that dropped off our plan, the renovations to those. And then what was added was the high school CTE College Tech education additions to the 3 high schools.
John, you said Franklin would turn it would be,
A 7th, 8th grade building for 800 students.
And that's for that attendance area, right? You want to talk about that, which sixth grade
Yep.
students will go to McKinley?
Yep, absolutely. So as we look at our attendance areas and the feeder system that was talked about, we'd have a 1,200 student building on the north side that would feed Kennedy, a 1,200 student building at the Taft site that would feed Jefferson, and then we would have McKinley and Franklin, McKinley being a 6th grade center that would feed to Washington, and Franklin that would feed to McKinley, and would feed to Franklin, and then those 7th and 8th graders from Franklin would feed into Washington.
So the locations at Taft, that's 6 through 8.
Yep, so Taft in the new building would be 6th grade through 8th grade middle school buildings, correct?
So the Franklin McKinley attendance area would have 1,400 students?
1,200. 800 at the 7-8 level, and 400
Oh,
at
400,
the
okay, excuse
6th
me,
grade level.
okay. Sorry, didn't read my paper.
You can flip to the next page. I think I covered everything. There was any other questions? I know that was a heavy slide.
I do have a question. The new building, which is,
Nancy,
well,
microphone, sorry.
just a quick question. The new building, 1,200 students at a new site. Do we know the site?
The site hasn't been approved by the board as of yet.
Okay.
And then can you just update, like, as far as Wilson is concerned, does that mean that there's no changes that are being proposed?
Correct. So when we're through this plan, our middle school buildings would be new to the north, new at Taft, 6th grade academy at McKinley, 7th, 8th grade building at Franklin, which means that Wilson, Roosevelt, and Harding would be repurposed. Repurposed meaning that they would not be in our inventory as middle schools any longer. We can go to the next slide. So building for the future 2037, what does that mean? So with the work already underway with our elementary schools, along with the plan that will go to the voters for approval, which we just talked about, we'll have one comprehensive plan. So we won't have 2 facility master plans, we will have one, building for the future. And what's significant about 2037? Significance of 2037 is that at that point in time, with the support from our voters, is that every building in the Cedar Rapids School District will either be recently renovated or a recently new building. Next page. So how will we get there? These are the funding sources that will be used. So on the left, we have SAVE, which is funding our elementary projects. Roughly $209 million will come out of the SAVE fund. I'm going to skip to the right. PEPL, $174 million will come out of PEPL. That PEPL will need to be a continuation. We'll have to continue that, so that is set to expire in June of 2025. So within this plan, we would also have a vote in September of 2024 to extend that funding stream. So that leads us to the bucket in the middle, $445 million. So that would be our ask to voters to make this plan happen. Now, we will do that in 2 separate phases, and we'll get into that next.
One question about the PEBBL vote. The PEBBL does occur in September, not November with a regular election?
Correct, yep.
It's a
So,
special election?
yep.
Okay.
PEPL we're still able to have on our special election dates.
Okay.
So 2 phases. So why are we going to split this into 2 phases? So we want to split this into 2 phases so we can be as fiscally responsible as possible and only ask the voters for the money when we need the money. We can't accomplish everything in this plan tomorrow. This plan will take some time, so that's why we have it into 2 votes so that we can get the money we need to get through phase one, and then we'll have a second ask back to our voters again to get into phase two. So as we look at this, this would be the phase one projects for a GEO bond that we would like to have a proposed vote in November of 2023. That would be for $220 million, which would be a levy rate increase of $2.70. So that would be for the land acquisition, the new 6th through 8th grade middle school on the new site, high school CTE additions, turf fields at the 3 high schools, cafeteria kitchen renovations at Kennedy, gym updates to Metro, and the 7th, 8th grade middle school renovation at the Franklin site.
In that order?
Not in that order. So with the GEO bond in 2023, this phase of projects would be projected to be complete by 2029.
And that's the length of the bond.
Tell me more when you say length of bond.
Or how long we're asking the voters to pay the bond.
To pay the bond, so that would be for 20 years. So next page would lead us to phase two. So that would be projected for a bond vote in November of 2029, and that would be in the amount of $225 million. So with that, phase two is obviously with the understanding that phase one had passed, right? We can't do phase two without phase one. So we would have had approval from the voters for the $2.70 increase in phase one. So phase two would just be a continuation of that levy at $2.70. So we would extend that for a longer period of time. So at that point in time, we wouldn't have an additional increase. It would just be a continuation of that levy rate.
Does that 2029 number projection, does that take inflation into consideration?
There is inflationary factors in all of these numbers, yes, correct.
Thank you.
We can go to the next slide. So this might look fairly familiar. I know we've talked about this multiple times in the past as we look at the levy rates of other school districts in Lynn County. Cedar Rapids is the second from the left there. So you can see where they compare to, I'm going to use the term our neighbors, the rest of the school districts in Lynn County. We are fairly low at $14.66 compared to others within the county. If we were to raise to have voter approval for a $2.70 levy rate increase for the GEO bond, that would put us at $17.36, which, as you can see, puts us in pretty comparable territory with the others within the county, and actually still lower than 4 other districts in the county. So the next page. So what are our next steps here? So for the phase one GEO bond vote, which would be November 7th of 2023, we will bring ballot language back to the school board meeting, which would be a special meeting on August 7th. That would really kick off the petition signatures that are needed to call the election, which would happen sometime in September. It cannot happen any later than September 22nd the election needs to be called prior to the petitions being turned into the county auditor, which is September 22nd by noon. So we would need a board meeting somewhere prior to that. And then communicate and educate. And really that's what will happen throughout the plan. We need to make sure that everyone in our community understands what the plan is, and we need to reach as many people as possible. The next step after the GEO bond, and we talked about this a little bit already, would be the renewal of the $1.34 PEPL, physical plant equipment levy. And then the phase two GEO bond would be in projected to be in November of 2029.
You said PEBBLE currently expires in 2025, so we'd go in 2024. How long does the PEBBLE go for?
It would be a 10-year.
Yeah.
So what if the bond doesn't pass? So we will continue down our, with our plan of building our elementary schools that are funded by SAVE. But we'll still have the following at the secondary level to deal with. So the rising cost of construction, the disproportionate access and opportunities for our students, and facilities with even a greater need of upkeep and repairs. Next slide, and I will turn it back over to Dr. Grover.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, John. So, even though we're talking about the facilities, I think it's important for us to be able to connect what we talked about earlier from our strategic plan, also with our facilities. What we're hoping to accomplish with this facilities master plan, and really just honoring the feedback that we receive from a broader group of people throughout all the different sources that we talked about. Number one, giving access and opportunity to our students. As we kind of think about some of the challenges that we currently have, especially if we're thinking about some of our middle schools, we want our students to be able to be competitive. We're investing in our school district as well as into our community. We want to be part of the process of workforce development. We want to make sure that when our city is going out attracting industry to our community, that they can look to our school district and say they are preparing the future workforce. You can bring your business here. And because we're already prepping them when they're in high school, they will be ready to either go off to college if that's what they want to do, or to be able to go directly to the workforce. As we think about services and supports for our students, as mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that in each of the areas of where our students, they attend school, that they are able to be able to get the support that they need, whether that's mental health, language development, food, wellness, activities, courts, all of it. And we want to make sure that you're able to see it across our community. That's one of the things that we kind of heard a little bit of feedback, that this plan does seem to cover more of our school districts. And so like what John is talking about, when we move to thinking about the comprehensive plan of 2037, that now we have the greater outlook for understanding how, our promise to the community to make sure that we are addressing the needs on a larger scale. So the question might be, why now? So as we know, so that will be the next page, that with the legislative changes on going out for our bond levies, that we have to do it in November. Okay, so I would love if I had the opportunity to do it in March, coming in so soon. But the good news is that the school board, you were already talking about it. You've been out engaging with the community on this. So while it may seem like we're just now revisiting it, you've never dropped it at all. It's been work behind the scenes to make sure that we were still moving it forward. And as a matter of fact, that time has been much needed, because we do feel like it represents many different facets of feedback to be able to move it forward. We do need to prepare our students for their future, and the sooner that we can get some of the buildings upgraded and making sure that it's relevant for their learning needs, the sooner they can engage in that manner. We want to be able to reestablish our competitive edge. So we have school districts all around us. They are investing in their facilities. So these things go hand in hand. So we talked about enrollment. We want people to say, hey, they have new buildings over here in Cedar Rapids too. We want our kids to stay over here. So we run across some of the same challenges when we hear stories about teachers, when they have to decide which district they want to teach in. Well, do they want shiny and new, or do they going to have to worry about, what's going to be happening in their rooms and what they may have to come out of their pockets to be able to try to support. So that competitive edge is certainly something that's a concern for us. And just ultimately, we want to be able to better meet the needs of our students. I believe that John has already alluded to the fact in regards to being good stewards, and as we think about it, it's been 23 years since the board has gone out for a bond. Now, the good news is that means that we have maximized the investments that were given to us. The other side of that coin is what happens when we haven't gone out to invest in 23 years. It means that there are a lot of needs that are in front of us that we have to address. We also want to make sure that we're staying in conversation with our financial advisors, as we can see that when we built Maple Grove, for example, that building cost us $20 million. By the time we got to Trailside, it was $30 million. So we saw 8% increase within 1 year. So we want to try to go out and do as much as we can with the monies and, being good stewards, again, asking for what we need when we need it. But we have to be cognizant of the cost factors as well. So as we move forward, you can see that our Building the Future Plan 2037, it allows us to be working on elementary and secondary at the same time. It also, as you can see, what we have in phase 1 and phase 2, that really no part of the community kind of feel like they're left out. You can see that we basically have either dirt turning or renovation or something happening in all parts of our school community. So we've already built West Willow and Maple Grove. Trailside will open in the fall of 2024. We had an update on that. We are on schedule. Hopefully we're still on budget. I like to say those two things together. We were able to establish the Early Learning Center that was much needed, and the elementary plan is still moving forward as planned. So when you kind of think about all of this together, the phase 1 projects with the secondary and the elementary, you can see that there with the support of our community. And then also phase 2 projects, you can kind of see, again, the secondary in conjunction with the elementary buildings, which gets us to our comprehensive plan, our comprehensive facilities master plan, Building the Future for 2037. And we will open it up for discussion at this time.
Any questions from the board?
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. I think it's, I just want to applaud the management of this for I think we're being fiscally responsible by waiting to have paid off the GO bond debt before pursuing a new GO bond. So just a comment.
Can you maybe speak a little bit more to the timeline? So today is our board meeting on the 17th of July, and then I think I saw a slide that language being proposed for August 7th. What's the expectation between now and August 7th?
I think some time for some feedback in there, President Tominski, and then also to be able to establish what that ballot language is. So what that means is on that petition that signatures will be collected that would then come back to you to call the election. That has to list exactly what is going to be on the bond vote. That language will be on the ballot when you go to the polls. That's also on the petition that you sign. So getting that established between now and then will also be part of that timeline.
What opportunities will be available to the community to provide feedback?
Yep, absolutely. We're going to first start with our staff actually this week. It will start sharing the information with any, tweaks or directives that you all provide us tonight. So we'll start with our staff on Thursday. We are in planning mode for going out to the community. We'll also be leaning on other community groups that stand ready to help us share the information. We want to make sure that we are organized in a way that we can educate and inform, and then other people can be galvanizing folks so that we are ready to get the signatures going.
I would like to say this is great. I have a better understanding of the various phases, and I think it's clearer to our community what we are doing. And I do like the phase 1 and then moving in and giving the explanation of going into the phase 2. And like you said, we are in need of improving our schools. I have also heard that there have been activities that can't be held at our schools because of the size of the schools so I can appreciate you guys really laying this out so I, as a board member, have a better understanding of where we're going and how we are moving forward.
If the votes were positive in 2023 and 2029, how long would the actual length of the bond be then?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I have the amortization schedule. I just didn't bring it with me, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, and I don't want to misspeak.
All right. And thank you for listening to our concerns about this. These are really hard decisions to make, and it's tough to make everybody happy, but I am really pleased with the way this works out across our city when it comes to equitability. But I am particularly pleased about the CTE opportunities here. I think an aquatic center is important, but I think that that could be better done in partnership with the city and with the community. So I think investing in CTE is really important in this plan. So.
I also just have a comment based on CTE as well. I mean, I think Cedar Rapids is in a really exciting place. We're growing industry and we're growing a lot of our community already. And to be proactive and be able to say, you know what, we're going to work with you. We are a community partner. We're going to really work hard to make sure that we have workforce that kind of suits the need of expansion that's already happening within the community, I think is tremendous. So I also, Director Newman, am very happy to see the CTE being so highlighted and called out in this plan. I think it's necessary and I think it's a real service to our community.
Just to piggyback on the CTE thoughts, I do think it's important to explain to the community exactly what that means and what that looks like. We're immersed in education, so we have a good idea about it, but for the general community, I think there's a large piece of education that needs to be done there. I really appreciate all of the feedback and work that went into this plan. The fact that we are touching all of the buildings across the city, I think is really, really important, that every neighborhood is going to see improvement in their schools. And as has been said many times, it's been a long time since we've asked our community for financial help. We can't wait any longer. Our kids deserve the best that we can give them, and they deserve it now. So, thank you.
I have a few questions. First question about the process of gathering signatures. Who's responsible for that? And just what's the process look like? It's a large number of signatures to gather. You know, if you got a lot of people to do it, it'd be easy, but I don't know how the process works. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so the process there's normally a community group that takes the lead. Board members are eligible to help with that process, as long as you're not using district resources, but you are a member of the community, as you guys know, so you're able to help with that. I guess there's a variety of different ways to do it, like I said, and from what I've understood, there's generally a parent group, a citizens committee that helps with that process. District resources, I don't believe can be helped, can be used in that, so it'll have to be outside of the district process, because it's the members of your community that are helping with that.
Right, that would be my concern, that doing this at this time, if there were district resources going towards it, because that's when school's starting, it's like we need to focus on the buildings now. So it's good to know that that's not going to take, people away from the schools and administrators out of this building, focusing on that.
Just a little bit of clarity there. So, yes, so as far as going out, asking people to vote for it or gathering the signatures, no, we cannot do that on school time, so just so you know that. But however, as we are sharing information and anything we create with the facts per se, other people can utilize those types of tools that we publish might be available on our website. We also have members from OPN in the audience tonight. I do want to point them out. Of course, they work with several of our surrounding districts on the bonds. They've been with us for quite some time. And so they have a method that they will be advising us on to make sure, number one, that we're staying legal and compliant, but we're also putting forth best strategies to be able to be successful for our students.
Okay, I would just say, I trust everybody, but the times when school starts, teachers are going to be focused on getting their classrooms ready, and so they need all the help that they can get, and I think they would say that themselves, so I don't want anything to be taken away from that in pursuit of this. A couple other questions, or just kind of, I'm wondering if we split, so we need 3 voter approvals based on what I'm seeing here now to make the plan happen, 2 different bond approvals and the PEPAL approvals, that's right. I'm worried that if we split the GO bond ask, what if we get the first one approved and the second one, we're just kind of blackmailing the community into at that point saying, hey, you got to do the second one. Previously we had it all at once. And so I don't know which one is the better way to do it, because I'd hate to do a plan for 6 years and then say, oh, the other half of the city is left out now because conditions have changed or something has changed. At that point, it almost seems better if you're going to go with the plan to touch every part of the community to get approval all at once. I don't know how everybody else feels about that. But it does strike me that getting approval from the voters 3 times is more difficult than 2 times or just 1 time. And it seems we would need at least 2 if PEPAL was going to be a big part of this, which it seems like it's going to be.
So we comment on that.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I'm gonna let John maybe speak to this a little bit, because I think that we talked with the committee. As a matter of fact, I would say we had a few days of discussions on which way was the best approach, whether to go for it all, to split it, how many times to split it, et cetera. But it really came down to a very defining point that kind of led us in this direction. So you may want to talk about the difference of the levy and the different approaches.
Yeah, so Director Merschbach, you're correct. We could do this in one ask. If we were to do this in one ask, it would require us to go up to our maximum levy rate of $4.05. So we were able to structure it to be in 2 asks, because even if that 405, we wouldn't issue all bonds today, they would be spaced out, just like this is, because of the rules and laws around the timing you have to use those bonds proceeds once the bond's issued. So by doing it this way, when we issue these bonds, we'll be at $2.70, and we're only getting the money we need when we need it.
Okay. I would like for the board maybe to take a look at some point of that density map you referenced in regards to McKinley, because, Wilson is in a different neighborhood, but I think they're similar to some degree in terms of the amount of kids that are around it and the amount of kids who might walk, maybe not quite as significant at Wilson, but they're not all that different of neighborhoods. And so it raises the same questions for me of, who are these kids? Are they walking? Are we taking the school out of their neighborhood to benefit a different neighborhood? And along those lines, I have a question. What conversations have we had with the city? Because the middle school part of this plan, it closed down Roosevelt, correct, at some point, closed down Wilson, closed down Harding. And so it seems like a lot of the resources are going to the edge of town under this plan. And when I'm out in the community, there's a lot of investment in the core of the city. And so at some point, if you follow, the news, you see the skies outside over the summer, you hear about climate change. There's a movement in a lot of places to focus more on walkability, focus more on density inside cities. And what I'm worried about when you kind of take all the resources out of the center of the city is we leave that hollow and we encourage, and maybe that's what the city wants, to just expand in a suburban manner, until we run out of land, I guess. But that's not necessarily what I support. Personally, there's certainly, we could have a long conversation about what's good for the city in that respect. But so what conversations have been had with the city? Do they want buildings on the edge of the city as opposed to the heart of the city? That's something I haven't really heard us talk about.
Can I ask a question, a follow-up to that? It's sort of a 2-part follow-up, so sorry. I don't mean to piggyback on your question, but I really would like to see the density reports around both Wilson and McKinley, and I know that's something that we've asked for at various times, and I don't know if we have walking versus busing data or getting dropped off at school data. And I think that would be really important for all of us to see. And I know we've asked for it. I don't know if that's been provided, but I haven't seen it. So that's one thing I'd really like to see as well. Around the issue of developing in the core, I don't want to see schools go out of the core either. And I think that we have to make some hard decisions when it comes to that. Are we looking at enrollment data and shifting demographic data when we do this? And do we get that from, I think it's RSP? And is that something that we can see as well? I don't know if we're having discussions with like the city development department necessarily, but I know we are making decisions based on where we see enrollment trending and moving and where the housing is happening. And we can't just keep buildings or build buildings in a place and say, well, you have to come here, because they won't necessarily. So I want to make sure that we're making those decisions based on where the enrollment's going, and it would be really helpful for us to see that as well.
Yes, we can provide that. RSP, they were standing ready to assist us tonight. We've just been trying to figure out exactly what information you need, so that's helpful for me to know that. And so allow us to reconvene with him, and we can come back and we can address both of those questions at that time. But the short answer is yes. A lot of this is built on enrollment. It's following where the kids are, where that population is trending, and he has projections out, for several years, and we can bring that to you.
And I think we've had this conversation multiple times, kind of the limitations of where our buildings can be, right? So it's on our existing sites, or it's on the potential to new sites. And the potential of new sites is very slim. That's the correct size for middle schools. As we look at our existing sites, that would either take or one of two obstacles there, I guess I'll say, and that's the tearing down of a historically significant building in our city, and I think we've heard the feedback about that. Or two, the site just isn't big enough to support the size of buildings with the extracurricular and outside spaces either. So that's kind of the difficulty that we ran into as we worked through that exercise of can we use existing sites or can't we? And that was really kind of the walls that we were put up against there. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, Director Merschbach, but Director Merschbach.
Maybe.
But
That's fine. One just kind of off-the-wall question. I hear so much about feeder systems when we're in this environment, but it's something I've never heard ever in my role as a board member before that. So we're talking about, we've heard to affirm the feeder system. Who's affirming the need for a feeder system? It just, I mean, if they are, that's great, but.
Well, maybe John, I'll let you talk about it. And Vic, if you want to come up, I guess I think we can have discussions, but I would lean more on the people that have been part of the conversations for a while to be able to talk about that, because I know it came up just last week when I was in the meeting. So maybe you want to share, and I guess you can invite Vicki up if she want to share some.
yeah, Vicki, you can fill in with what I forgot here. But within our committee work, that was the top, or definitely the top three, like driving factors of what needed to be included in this plan, which then ultimately led to the reduction of the amount of middle schools that we had so that we could align those feeder patterns. We heard that from the staff and the principals that were on our facility master plan, along with our community members of this is very hard for our students when they make their friendships in elementary, for example, and now we go to different middle schools, and then we might even go to different high schools. So being able to align so that you have those support systems, both staff and your friends, from day one in kindergarten through the 12th grade, how important that is to all of those people, community staff, and our building leaders.
Yeah, I would just echo what John said. That was actually probably the first item we came to consensus with on the secondary plan. It was also
Get a little bit closer, sorry.
it was one of the first items we came to consensus with on the secondary facilities group, that they felt like kids want to know when they start out that I'm going to be a Jayhawk, or I'm going to be a Cougar, or I'm going to be a Warrior. And they wanted to have that sense of community from the time they started at 5 years old all the way up through their high school years. And it not only helps the kids form those core relationships, but the committees also felt like it was important to develop the programs we were just talking about. It's really disheartening when we have districts around us that we can't compete with because we have smaller middle schools and we can't always even field teams for things. And so when they build that support and groups, whether it's fine arts or whether it's baton twirling or playing the oboe or whatever it might be, starting from a young age and developing that sense of pride in your funnel. So I think, and it was also brought up, I served as a community member, not as a consultant in the elementary, and that also came up during that time. Like, we want to see kids know where they're going to be and not get into certain schools and say, well, this group is going here and this group's going there. So it was pretty loud, in my opinion.
I can speak anecdotally from my time at Kennedy. We had kids that went to elementary school together, and then when they got to middle school, some of them went to Harding, some went to Franklin, and they could potentially be living across the street from each other. and then they would all again come back to Kennedy. And kids are pretty malleable, yes, but it was always a conversation every time for that group of kids, because they felt like they were losing their peer group and having to start over. And when you're in middle school, that's a little difficult.
I'd just like to add one thing that I've understood about this system too, and the need for feeder systems. They're not always going to be perfect, or families will move, or whatever it is, but kids are at highest risk at transition points. So 5th grade to 6th grade, 8th grade to freshman year of high school, and having built-in supports has always been pretty important along those lines.
And I would just extend that when we were doing our listening tour, we were focused on comprehensive behavioral plan, and knowing that from building to building, those teams could actually be able to communicate with each other. So having one cohesive team that can have those relationships with kids all the way through is certainly something that I felt like we heard loud and clear would be beneficial.
And I think in addition to that behavioral plan, kind of continuity throughout the shifting from school to school, I think it's also probably easier to do that vertical articulation of academics, so that when a kid's moving from elementary to middle and from middle to high, that academic pathway is tighter together. And I think that's a real benefit, right? Because we want to graduate students.
Great. Any additional questions?
Yeah. Where was I? Let's see here. One thing I did want to bring up is the need for this board to have an alternative in mind to this plan, because John said, and I understand where you're coming from, John, given what this board has done in the past, said that the elementary plan would move forward if this was voted down, and that's a board decision, as far as I can tell, whether or not to continue to move forward with the elementary plan after a vote on this, whenever it may be. And that's something that can always change. And so I just think we ought to be realistic. And then going back to the committee, I just think we also ought to be realistic about, we use this committee process. The committee process has played out over a long period of time. We've had many meetings about it. We've heard from people on the committee, but at every point from before I was on the board, when the elementary plan was, first being discussed, to literally today, there have been people who have either been on the committee or have gone to the listening sessions who have said, this is a top-down process, this is not what we want, this is not representative of our views as a community, or literally the views of the people on the committee. And that's fine, committee isn't a perfect process, but when we're going to get this approved by the voters, we just need to be honest with ourselves as a board about our likelihood of it getting passed. We can say, oh, it's got a great thing. When it comes to the feeder system, everything you guys said, it sounds great to me. It sounds true. But what I was saying is, people aren't knocking down my door saying, do a feeder system. They've got other concerns, more pressing in many times, and you have to balance those things out. And we're also asking them to balance those things while saying, by the way, raise your own taxes to do it. Fund these specific projects. And so I just want us to be realistic about that. The last thing, I'll stop wasting everyone's time. I want to go back to the competitive edge part. I think that's important. I think there's a lot of ways that we can work with our community. Director Newman, you've talked a lot about the Aquatic Center and how we can do that in a way, not necessarily just the district saying, here's an aquatic center, this is our plan. There's athletic facilities in the community, where they hold basketball tournaments, volleyball tournaments, things like that. There's ways to get it done, get access for our students, if we got creative. This is kind of, a blunt force. Say, hey, we're going to spend $100 million on a new middle school with a great new gym. That gets it done. Is that what people want? I guess if we take it to the voters, we'll see. But when it comes to the competitive edge, I think, and, allow me to speak for my generation of millennials, that idea of walkability, that idea of moving to a city core, a city like Cedar Rapids, I've lived in a big, sprawling, suburban city where everybody lives in the suburbs. It's got its advantages, it's got its disadvantages. Moving to Cedar Rapids, living a mile and a half from downtown is great. My family loves it. I think we can use that as a competitive edge in saying, if you want to go move to the suburbs, you can. In fact, there's suburbs within our district that you can move to where we've already built a new elementary school. If that's what you want, people are going to do it no matter what. But I really have concerns that we're not saying, that 1960s house, it's a small house, but not everybody wants a lot of house. People have a lot of different priorities, when deciding where to live. And it's like, here's an affordable place, here's a school right next to it, your kids can walk there, maybe even more density will build up, and there'll be a grocery store you can walk to. Maybe those things are something that we can be a part of, but once we disinvest from those neighborhoods, we haven't talked tonight about the elementary plan as well, several elementary schools will be closed under this version of the plan. And that's, again, more disinvestment from the core of the city. And so far, almost all the investment and so much of the investment in this plan is farther out towards the edge of the city. And that will make us more competitive in that area with Linn-Mar, with College Community. But they can't compete with us in the center of town because that's us. That's all us. It's only going to be us. And we just don't ever talk about what does the world look like in 2037 and 2050 when my kids are my age, and what kind of world are they going to be living in. And it's hard to say, let's ask people for all this money and not even have that conversation.
I have a question, John, kind of based on that. So, we're kind of operating within some constraints, right? So we want to repurpose historic buildings. We don't want to demolish them. They are on land that is inside the city, inside the core that we could use, but we're not, because we're not destroying those historic buildings to use them. If we were to repurpose those buildings or remove those buildings, would we have enough existing inventory in the core to build new schools there?
I think we would need to do some further research on that to be sure. But I know as we analyze just the sheer size of the properties we had and the access to get to and from those properties, that just about all of our existing properties were a challenge to be able to build a new building with the modern amenities that we would need in today's world.
Right. I just, we're trying to make the best decision that we can for many parties that are involved, and not everyone's going to be happy. And it's a difficult spot to be in, but the reality is that there's not enough money to maintain an aging infrastructure, and we're not being appropriately funded at the state level to carry on business. Even if we had new facilities, we would be challenged to carry on business. So I think that, putting things in perspective of how this committee and this work has been intentional in listening to multiple viewpoints, knowing that not everyone's going to be happy, knowing that there isn't going to be a simple solution that checks everybody's boxes. I just want to take a moment and thank you for the thoughtful consideration that has been put into all of these different issues.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that, and I know Dr. Grover touched on this a little bit. That really kind of hit home to me when we said, why now? We built Maple Grove, and 2 years later, Trailside is under construction. $20 million to $30 million, so $10 million of difference across 2 years for a building that's within about 1,500 square foot of each other with the same amenities, the same types of finishes, will serve 600 students. Like, there's not a whole lot different about the services offered in those buildings for $10 million more. One other example, as we talk about being fiscally responsible, is the numbers that we had last year for this plan. Anything that we carried over, our estimators said, you need to adjust those 8% up for 1 year, 8%. Those need to go up 8% to get to today's numbers from what they were a year ago. So the longer this happens, is that 8% every year? Is that more than that every year? We don't know. But construction was never cheaper than what was yesterday.
Any final comments?
Can I say one more thing real quick? I know I said I was done. We talk about equitable buildings and equitable resources in our buildings. Our community is not an equal community. There's inequity in our community. Last time we sat around this table and had a facilities master plan workshop like this, I talked about it and talked about what we can use save funds for, and we got an answer from the previous superintendent. I'm still not sure is the correct answer, but we haven't talked about it again. We don't need just equitable buildings. We need an equitable community. We need buildings in that equitable community. And Dr. Grover, I want to thank you because you've taken that very seriously. From the first time, we had a conversation, and I think we're ready to take it seriously as a community, and I think it needs to come to the board table and be a serious thing because, if kids we hired a homeless transition specialist for one of our buildings today. If kids don't have a place to stay, the school building is going to be a respite for them, when they're there, but it's still going to be a tough life when they're out of the school. And so that's what we need to take seriously. I wish it was in this plan in some way. I wish we were serious about finding a way to put it in this plan.
Thank you so much for that. Part of when we talk about services and supports to our students as far as being in the strategic plan, and we will take that into account with our facilities, we really do want to expand our community schools. We need more of them, and we've already factored that in, so I really do appreciate that. And I do, being the new person here as part of this conversation, first of all, I want to thank the team for all the work that's gone into this process. It is very tedious. It's many hours, many considerations, and the complexities, but still trying to find a way to honor where everyone should be able to see something within this plan that resonates with them, resonates with their community, with their child, with the future aspirations for our community. Now this is just a point of data. There were 10 items, just taking a quick cursory count of the items that came over from the 2022 secondary plan. There were 10 items that committee brought forward to the board back in November. Of those 10 items, we brought 7 of them forward. I think that is honoring the work of the committees. And so I recognize that maybe there have been times where there have been oversight on our part, but we don't want that to happen again. The other part about the committees, and I just want to be clear about this, that they play a vital role. The many conversations and the many times that we call them, email, they still show up for us. That is very important because every time is one little nugget that they provide that gives us some insight on the work that we're doing. At the same time, when we bring forward a committee, sometimes we may have 50 people, 100, sometimes we have 12 or 15. That is a sector of our community. It is the board's responsibility and administration to take everything into consideration. So when we took everything into consideration, we were able to make a few tweaks that still honored all of that work, and it also honored the other voices that we heard out in the community. This is our opportunity to build something together. This is not about our own personal agendas. This is about the future of our city and about the future of our kids. And I hope that we can look at today as a fresh start and moving forward and understanding the value that all of us bring to being able to elevate the pathways, passions, and plans for our students. Thank you so much for the discussions tonight.
Good. Well, thank you so much for the leadership and getting the plan to this point. I know this board will look forward to hearing the community's feedback and the next steps. With no further business, we stand adjourned.